Booyah, Recruiting Nation. Welcome to episode 3 of Uncharted Waters with the one, the only, Admiral James Waters. I'm Chief Toteme. Today is a phenomenal day. You know what happened today? Navy Recruiting Nation made mission. Sir.
Hoo-yah, Recruiting Nation.
Hoo-yah.
Made mission.
I love it. Sir, we haven't, as an enterprise, been able to say that in quite a long time. So first and foremost, thank you, sir. Thank you, thank you,
thank you. Thank you, Recruiting Nation.
Of course. So we're going to do a quick recap of last episode. We looked over the numbers. And Recruiting Nation, thank you so much for viewing the past episodes that have been aired. Sir, the field is clapping and screaming your praises. I actually received a phone call yesterday from a Chief Cabrera down in Jacksonville, Florida. He said, when you see the Admiral, can you give him a hug for me? He said he's never written 50 contracts as a DLCPO, but how excited he was, the morale of his division. He said, when you see the Admiral, please give him a hug. So Chief Cabrera, I'll give the Admiral a hug after we done airing, but now he knows the message.
If
Sir,
hugs is what it takes, then hugs it is.
We love it. Sir, can you speak a little bit about battle stations and how this has definitely impacted the field?
Yeah, absolutely. But, first and foremost, I just want to express how excited I am about what I'm seeing with respect to making mission, right? We are flying through contracts. It is so encouraging to see, overall, the contracts for all Navy, that's active and reserve enlisted. We are, as we're recording this, just about to the nuke field mission for the month, which is another huge accomplishment. And I couldn't be more proud of Recruiting Nation for the work that's going on to get us there. Right? And part of that, I think, is unlocking this hyper-complex medical waiver process. So as I dug in over the first couple of weeks in the job, and I'm sitting here today at about just over a month in the job, but after a week or so, I really was digging in on what is going on with this medical waiver process. I knew all along there was a challenge with it. My first trip was up to MEPCOM in Chicago, and then I visited the MEPS there, really dug in with the Chief Medical Officer and the leadership there at the MEPS to understand exactly what happens as they flow through. What is the Chief Medical Officer doing? How do they work with MHS Genesis? And then what is their expectation of the service in reviewing those medical waivers and making a decision. And one of the things that I took away from that was the Chief Medical Officer at the MEPS is reviewing from a clear set of standards from the DoD instruction, and is calling essentially balls and strikes on whether it meets those standards, the person meets those standards or not in various areas. And then it comes to the service, and the decision of the service is not a medical, physical health determination like a doctor with a patient. It's really an assessment of risk to the enterprise of bringing somebody in that has a history that doesn't align with the DoD standards. So it's really a commander's decision. And so when I started pulling the string on that, I realized that a lot of that commander discretion had been delegated to the medical team. And the medical team, to their credit, was applying sort of medical standards and not the same level of risk sensitiveness that I have. And so I'm like, okay, we need to look at this. I looked at, well, how many are in the backlog? And I was taken aback by the number, to be honest. And so we gathered together 100 of my now closest friends, and for about a week, that's what we focused on, is like, okay, we're going to take a look at what do we know from the record that the Chief Medical Officer at the MEPS reviewed, what did my medical officer and their team look at, and just make decisions. Right? No more, let's get down to zero risk. This is about taking what we know and making a risk decision and then moving on. Because I am super sensitive to the idea that it's not just about the individual risk to the member, it's about the amount of time that it's taking to get to a decision, right? Because that's bandwidth for the recruiters in managing those folks while they're waiting for a decision, and it's their opportunity to walk away, right? So a candidate at rest is a candidate at risk.
Yeah.
So we're working toward no more than about a 3-day turnaround. We're pretty close to that now. We're not quite where I want to be, but it's got my attention very, very closely, and we're working toward, and we've made a lot of progress.
Copy.
So,
sir, do you foresee us staying or keeping the battle stations moving forward?
No, I don't think that we're going to have 100 people in a conference room with me sitting at the head of the room with doctors on either side, because that's what battle stations was, and 100% of my time for over 12 hours a day was sitting there focused on that. Now, what I will say, though, out of that is we've also taken all the lessons of how that process flow works, and we're scaling it to how to stay with what we've learned for a day-to-day process. So that means that every day, I'm going to get a stack of the things that are the really hard decisions, right? The docs are going to be able to get to yes on many of the decisions, but the really hard ones are going to come to me. And I've got to recognize for every single day that I'm here, that's something I'm going to do during the day. It's like drinking coffee in the morning and reviewing really hard medical waivers.
Copy that. Copy that. So, sir, we're going to shift gears slightly. We have Fleet Week Miami on the horizon.
Oh, yeah.
How do you feel about Fleet Week, the new implementation, the new changes? It's never been this scaled. How do you feel about, the SecNav coming down?
Yeah, that's incredible. SecNav is going to spend his entire week in Miami for Fleet Week. It's the first time that Fleet Week's been in Miami in recent memory. Mm-hmm. It's been nearby in Florida, but Fort Lauderdale. So Miami is a much bigger place, and we're all in. So a couple of things. NTAG Miami has done a phenomenal job integrating with Region Southeast into the Fleet Week events. It's given us unprecedented access to the schools in Miami. Places like private schools that have never really let us in are letting us in to talk and show what it means to be a sailor. I think that's huge opportunity. We're bringing back the swarm. So for 3 days, 20 plus of our best recruiters from around the country are going to be in Miami to augment NTAG Miami in the recruiting, to give them more depth and breadth in their work there. But even things like down to every sailor that comes off one of those ships that's there, and there are going to be thousands, have a Liberty card, right, that's associated with Fleet Week. Okay. That Liberty card is going to have a QR code that leads them to Navy.com. Oh. So if a sailor has a conversation with somebody that's interested in the Navy, they can just, boop the QR code with their phone, and they could be chatting with a recruiter in 5 minutes.
I love it. I love the vision that every sailor is a recruiter, sir.
Absolutely.
I love it. So, sir, we have taken some suggestions in the Admiral suggestion box. The field has some questions.
Okay.
Nation, are you ready? So the first question, sir, is, can we talk about nukes allowing to stay in the delayed entry program that had previous POSDATs?
Yeah, that's a great question. Hey, before I answer that, I will say to Recruiting Nation, I see every suggestion that comes in. It comes to my inbox. So what we're doing here is really just looking at a few of those suggestions. They all, the staff here is working through those suggestions to get to answers, but I truly appreciate the energy and effort that's gone into making those suggestions. With respect to nuke POSDAT, we've changed that just a week or so ago. Worked with Naval Reactors, and now if you have a nuke that is a POSDAT at MEPS, they can enter DEP as a nuke. They still have to wait the 60 days to come back, and then they have to test negative. This is POSDAT for THC.
Oh, yeah.
Come back and test negative. and they're good to go. So we fixed it.
Groundbreaking. Sir, next question. Is there a plan to increase the amount of maps quotas for the enterprise?
Yeah, so we're working with N1 right now. My expectation is that we should see an approval of an increased number of map quotas beyond what the normal map seasons allowed, to really focus on the value the Navy places in our recruiters. So I can't talk specific numbers yet because they're not approved, but I think the nation will be pleased with where we are on that.
Copy that. So, sir, the next one is kind of near and dear to me. So historically, we used to give Navy Achievement Medals, including flocks, to other service members that brought us referrals.
You mean other services?
Other services.
Yeah, so an Army person that referred somebody to the Navy?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, hooyah. I love that.
I love it.
Or what do they say there? Hooah? I'll give them a hooah. There's rules, in SecNav level rules, that don't allow me to give an award, like a NAM, to another service member, but I can do a flock.
Copy.
So I think a flag letter of commendation in most services has some point value for advancement and just shows appreciation. So I'm happy to sign a flock for another service member that refers somebody to the Navy.
Copy. So, sir, I know one of the gripes from the field is Pulse Secure still being down.
Yeah.
They're just trying to figure out is there a plan in place, or do we have an approximate time that potentially we may have it back running?
Yeah. So I will say from the start that the reason Pulse Secure is down is because it's a real threat, bad actor threat. You know, that folks have. That it provides an opportunity for people to get in that really shouldn't be in. So it's real, and that's why it was shut down. Navy Virtual Desktop is a workaround for now. Those are available, and you can work with your IT folks up through our N6 to get access to Navy Virtual Desktop. And the technical folks in the Navy are working toward a replacement for Pulse Secure.
Copy that. Next question, sir, is with the organization flattening, does this support our new priorities, or do you potentially see there being a change?
Yeah, so I just signed out a decision guidance memorandum on the flattening of the organization. We're going to keep some of the things that I think did add value, the number of stations within a division, the work of, the recruiters that are closer to the front lines, continuing to recruit. But bringing back things like 2 ACRs at each NTAG, I think that's an important element that as we are a learning organization, we learned that was probably not the right thing to do. So I signed that out to actually codify what of the flattening actions we're going to keep, and which of the flattening actions we're going to do away with.
Copy that. So now, sir, one of the emails that I did receive was in regards to the flattening of the organization. The question came from rinks specifically, so I'm answering your questions. They want to know if their station makes mission, do they still have to write a contract?
Yeah, so the way that I articulated that in the DGM is that the rinks are still, they're still gold. And the reason that we kept it that way, that I made the decision to keep it that way, is that what we've learned overall across Recruiting Nation is that keeping the rinks in that game actively with territory and recruiting has borne more fruit than the cost of the additional work that the rink does in recruiting, vice supervising. And some of that, that could potentially change over time. Some of it's related to the fact that our manning isn't at 100%. So I have stations out there with a rink and one.
That's true.
Right? And so I've got to be able to ensure that we're maximizing our recruiting bandwidth. Having one person working with one person supervising is not the most efficient way. That said, exceptions to policy can be requested up through the region. So if you're a rink that has, 5 recruiters in your station, well, first of all, that's an incredible blessing. That may be appropriate. That may be appropriate, and I'm certainly willing to continue to have that conversation as we continue to grow the number of recruiters.
Copy. So, sir, next question. Sir, do you have a plan already in place to analyze the changes that you've already made, and how they'll be worked in the future, and how you look to improve them?
Yeah, so we're looking, we are awash in data, right? Salesforce provides an incredible amount of data. I take a daily ops brief each morning at 8 o'clock Central, where I look at fairly high level down to how each NTAG is performing relative to each other. Things like activity, how is each NTAG performing relative to each other on prospecting metrics, on contracting metrics, on shipping metrics, so that I understand where we are, and I'm using that to evaluate. As far as the specific things that were in the 7, 30, 60, 90 day things that we've put in place, I will say I'm not collecting data on did handwritten statements generate X amount of improvement, because it's just too obvious that we shouldn't be doing those things. For the things that I think are more metric driven, like the medical waiver process, we're looking very closely at how much time, how many people are walking away, how much improvement through that Salesforce data. So yes.
Copy. So, sir, will there be a course of action for policies that do not work? Do you plan to just diminish, or do you want to revamp some things that you foresee?
Yeah, so if we find a policy that isn't working, whether it's something that I put in place as a change or something that previously existed, I am open to changing that policy. I hope that Recruiting Nation senses that if you propose something that is clearly not working, I'll change it.
Copy.
I don't have any, I'm not shy about that. The only constraint is that some of those policies that are like, oh, that's really a pain, are put in place by higher authority, not because they want to make our lives harder, but because there are people above me in the chain of command that need to understand some of the data and some of the things that we're doing.
Copy.
And they have other constraints placed on them, even by Congress, right? And so sometimes when you're working one-on-one with a candidate, it may seem very frustrating, I have to do this one thing, but it's because in aggregate, the Department of Defense needs to understand what are the services doing with each of these things.
Copy. So, sir, to close out episode 3, in your first month on the job, we're at mission. So we know your short-term goals. Can you elaborate a little bit on some of your long-term goals and aspirations for Navy Recruiting Command?
Yeah, so clearly long-term, continue to make mission, right? We have a large, deficit that, CNO talked about with Congress of 6,700 was our projected miss. Mm-hmm. So we have a ways to go. We don't have to just make mission, we have to beat mission every month for the rest of the year. Yep. And we're going to beat mission this year, which is incredible, or this month, and then move on. But ultimately, I want to be in a place where every recruiter gets the training they need, every recruiter has the time to prospect, the time to establish meaningful, trust-based relationships with candidates, and then work to close, and then train on lessons learned, and then have time to recover. I want Culture of Excellence 2.0, Forged by the Sea, to be instantiated in every corner of Recruiting Nation.
Hoo-yah. Sir, any last words for Navy Recruiting Nation for episode 3?
Yeah, hoo-yah, Recruiting Nation. Winners win.
Hoo-yah. See you soon. Uncharted Waters with the one, only, Admiral James Water, Chief Totemate signing out. Congratulations again, Navy Recruiting Command.
Hoo-yah.